Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I want to encourage you guys, if you have not done so already, sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things I'm hearing about BYU sports. I had an update, for example, yesterday on some of the chatter I heard about Tom Holmoe and potential successors. You want that inside intel? Join us today. The best part is it's just $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group, and you also can get a 14-day free trial before you're charged anything. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and help supporting what we're doing here. All right. Before we go on today's show, a couple of notes for you. I want to start off talking about the situation around BYU and Tom Holmoe's eventual successor. Obviously, there's going to be no shortage of options for BYU to reach out to interview, to vet, all the different things they're going to have to go through when it comes to finding their new athletic director. And I do appreciate Tom being so candid like he was yesterday in that press conference. But the bigger point to be made here is I believe that BYU would do well to look at all options and maybe favor options that are not currently in Provo, Utah, an external hire, as it were. I think that a new vision, a new feel, some outside influence, I'm not saying that there's like a groupthink thing going on with BYU, but having somebody come in from the outside could be the right option for what BYU is trying to do, and especially in this new era of college athletics. And a name that I left off my list, and I didn't mean to, but I just kind of spaced it, but a couple of people mentioned it to me, is Kentucky Deputy AD Marc Hill. Now, Marc is a well-respected college administrator. He has been working with Mitch Barnhart, who is the AD at Kentucky. Funny enough, Marc Hill currently is in his deputy AD role, is the boss of former BYU basketball coach Mark Pope. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, Jake, why would somebody from Kentucky want to come to BYU? Well, as you would guess, Marc Hill is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His daughter played softball at BYU. He had a son played baseball at UVU. I think their other son played, I don't remember what sport it was, at Southern Virginia University, which is like BYU Virginia Light, whatever you want to term it. So they are a strong church-affiliated family, and Marc has been working in the SEC. Now, I talked earlier about how the SEC and the Big Ten, well, they, in theory, think that they are the two top dogs in college sports. Well, why don't you get some of that experience in your athletic department if you're BYU? I'm not saying that Marc Hill has any interest potentially in even leaving Kentucky, but if I'm Shane Reese, Keith Vorkink, who are going to obviously factor in to deciding who they're going to hire as BYU's new director of athletics, you could do a lot worse than bringing a guy from the SEC who's got a proven track record in that conference and could bring some, I think, ideas. I mentioned some like outside vision of just a new perspective on what the future of college athletics is and will be, but at the same time, understands what the mission and the overall aims of what BYU stands for. You could, Marc Hill, absolutely add him to your list, because I had more than a handful of people say, hey, Jake, you're forgetting a name on your list. And if you want that full list, go back to yesterday's podcast. You can get the full list there. And it's, I don't want to take up a ton of time here on this podcast and bog you down with it. But the good news is there are no shortage of options for BYU. Internally, Tom Holmoe, he gave what I would consider a pretty strong endorsement to the guy he called his right-hand man, Brian Santiago. He did that at the tail end of his press conference yesterday. Now, Brian is a lightning rod. We all know that. But that was a pretty ringing endorsement from a guy who's been working literally in lockstep with Santiago for years, and Tom Holmoe. So I would expect that Brian Santiago is on the short list to be one of the people that BYU vets very carefully and closely in interviews, all that type of stuff, and very well could ascend to the AD chair. And once again, I understand he's a lightning rod amongst the fan base. I have my personal opinions on who BYU should hire, but I think I made it pretty clear that right now, I'm kind of leaning towards BYU going outside of the Provo bubble for this hire. And it's nothing against the internal candidates. Chad Lewis is a freaking BYU legend and would do great in that role. Liz Darger, she's paid her dues. She is well respected in college athletics across the country, and could be a pick that I think would signal that BYU is really in tune with what's going on in college athletics. I think she's got a good perspective of what the future holds. once again, Brian Santiago has been right there in a lot of those meetings that Tom Holmoe has held over the years and essentially would keep things humming like they are. But I also at the same time think that the future of college athletics is so convoluted, messy, but at the same time has so many unique and new facets to it that maybe you look outside. And Marc Hill may very well not be the guy. I also, and Mitch Harper mentioned this, and I've been thinking about it as well. What if you just looked outside of college athletics all the same? We all know that essentially now a college athletics department it's a multi-million dollar entity. It's a business. So why don't you tap into the business community that's around BYU and maybe see if a CEO or somebody like that who is well respected in their own sphere wants to essentially kind of blend what they're doing in business with college athletics. There are no shortage of options out there when it comes to what BYU could look at in terms of who they hire as this new AD. But as Shane Reese said yesterday, there is no what do you say? There is no replacing Tom Holmoe. And I agree because Tom was absolutely stellar in his role. I think he was the perfect guy over 2 full decades to lead BYU through some very precarious situations. And I think across the board, by and large, handled things the right way. But there's no replacing him. There's only, and as Shane Reese said, there's only successors. You find somebody that can kind of take the baton and carry it forward. And I really do think that BYU, this job, it's got a whole lot more appeal than many might imagine out there. And I think that BYU would do well to kick tires on every option available. Cast a wide net, vet everybody, ask the biggest. I mentioned Scott O'Neill yesterday. When you work for Live and you're getting money from the PIF, the Public Investment Fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, he's got a lot of money probably on that contract to lead Live Golf. But you make a phone call for BYU and say, hey, Scott, this is Shane Reese from BYU. We have an opening for our athletics director position. Would you have any interest in potentially talking further about it? He says, yes. You continue the conversation. He says, no. He said, hey, thanks, but stay in touch. Anything changes down the line, love to have you involved. You cast a wide net and vet all options out there. Some will essentially tell you, yeah, no, I'm out right away. Others will say, hey, maybe I am interested and maybe we should talk further about this. You do your due diligence and see where the chips fall. And I think that BYU would do well to look at all options. And once again, like I said, Marc Hill, file that name away as an option as this AD search continues for BYU. All right. Meant to spend a lot less time talking about that, a couple other topics, but hey, so we got tomorrow's podcast for. I do want to give a shout out real quick. Stone Cushing. He has been named to the NCBWA preseason All-American first team. He is a really, really phenomenal pitcher for BYU. He's one of the 3 relievers recognized on the Big 12 All Preseason team as well. He also begins the year on the NCBWA Stopper of the Year preseason watch list, and he is currently 8th in the country in the active save leaders category. And that's really cool to see a preseason All-American accolade for BYU baseball, because if you look at the preseason predictions for BYU baseball, they're down pretty bad. But having a star pitcher like a Stone Cushing who can come in and close out a game for you, it's nice to have in your back pocket for Trent Pratt. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Thursday. As always, truthfully, do appreciate everything you guys do to support the podcast. Please continue to rate, review, share with your family and friends, subscribe to the show. Essentially just keep doing what thousands of you are doing at this point, and hopefully thousands more will be joining us in due order. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, I like to say this all the time to finish up the show. Thank you for being an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.